Welcome to Scientific Figure Preparation in Adobe Illustrator in Fiji. My name's Sarah Smith and I'm from the Stowers Institute for Medical Research, and this is part 5, Charts and Graphs. So today we're going to be importing graphs from Excel, but these principles apply to other graphing programs as well, even Python and R. So we're going to be talking about PDF files, importing vector graphics, inspecting layers, cleaning things up, grouping, dealing with the text in a chart and the line weights in the chart. All right, so let's get started. So I have some fake graphs here that I made that we're going to use for an example. This is an Excel file. And so we just have some plain bar graphs and also a line chart that we'll look at. All right, so let's start with the first one. Excel, like you're often, at Stowers, we do a lot of collaborating, and so you'll often have a lot of graphs from made by different people in your paper. And so you need, as the primary author, you need to be responsible for making sure all of them go together and look good in your paper. So that means making sure the fonts are right, the colors are right, and everything looks good, as well as that the scientific content is reasonable. So what we're going to do is export our file first as a PDF. You can copy and paste directly into Illustrator, but it's a little bit easier to manage if you export as a PDF. The reason is that PDF is a vector graphics format, and if you remember, we talked earlier about how Illustrator is a vector graphics program. It's going to render vector graphics the best, and when you export to PDF, it's kind of more reliable the way that Excel records data as a PDF as opposed to just pasting directly into Illustrator. So I'm going to click on my chart that I want. I'm going to go to File, Export, PDF, yeah. All right, so right in here, Graph 1. Figure 1B. That way we can keep track of where it's supposed to be. All right. Publish. Great. It's doing it. So now we have it in here. Great. And we'll open it in Illustrator. On my desktop. Graph 1, Figure 1B, open. All right, so this is our graph. It looks just like it did in Excel. And what we need to do first, well, you don't have to do this every time, but what we're going to do right now is look at this graph. What is this thing made out of? Because each of these lines and things is a different vector drawing element, which is actually editable in Illustrator, so you have to be careful not to edit things that you don't want to edit, and also try to take out the things that you don't want, specifically this gray line around the outside. And also we're going to want to manage our text within Illustrator to make sure that their font sizes and text types are right. Okay, so we're going to go first. This is when we're going to use our layers tool. I don't really use layers for figures, but these are in layers, or you'll be able to inspect these in layers. So if we click on layers, and you click this little arrow button, you can see all of the different things that are in this file. All right, and what you'll see are a lot of things called clip groups. Clip groups are what makes dealing with Excel files in Illustrator a nightmare. If you've ever tried to edit an Excel file in Illustrator and you're trying to click things and then things are disappearing, it's super weird, you're like, what's going on? You want to pull all your hair out? It's because of these clip groups, typically. All right, so, and I'll warn you that what I'm about to show you If you've been lazy and you've set your axes so that part of your data is cut off in Illustrator instead of making a graph that only includes the data that you want, this isn't going to work. You have to have a graph that only includes the data that you want and none of it is artificially cut off by weird axes, okay? But what we want is to remove all of these clip groups. So here's what you do. You first need to select everything. So you can do that by just clicking and dragging over the whole thing. That selects everything. You can see everything selected in the layers window. Then you're going to need to use a keyboard shortcut to do this, release clipping masks. So here is the Adobe list of all of their keyboard shortcuts, which is pretty handy. You can Google it. And what we want in Windows is Control-Alt-7. And in Mac, it's Option-Command-7. So I'm going to hit Control-Alt-7 and watch what happens in my layers window. All of my clipping masks went away. But look, everything looks the same. Nothing actually changed. We just lost all those clipping masks that were causing a lot of problems if you were to actually try to edit this. So now, if I just select these things that I want to be deleted, then everything deletes nice and cleanly. No weird stuff gets deleted, which is great. So I'm going to want to manage all of this text in my figure file after I've moved it over there, but first I'm going to group them so that it's easier for me to manage. So I'm just going to select them, and then I'm going to go Object, Group. I can also press Control-G, and the same thing with these over here. Object, Group. Then I'm going to choose the whole thing and group that on top of my two little groups. Object, Group. All right, and that'll make it easier for me to resize. I can select the whole thing, and I can press Shift and resize uniformly. All right, so I'm going to take that. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to paste it into my figure. Okay, great. So now I can put it over here, or I can put it over here, depending on how I'm organizing my figure. And then I need to deal with my text. So I'm going to zoom in some. Okay. First I want to add my panel letter. So over here I have the character style that I made in the last section. I have panel letters. And so I chose that. Now I'm going to use my type tool. Click here, type a lowercase b. Get that where I want it. I'll make sure that it's perfect later. Okay, now I want to manage all of these different texts in my figure. So I've already made a character style for axes labels and for tick labels. Axes labels is Arial regular 7-point. You could use 6 or 5-point depending on how packed your figure is going to be. And then tick labels is the same thing but 5-point. Okay. So first I'm going to have to ungroup this grouping that I did before. Remember, I grouped these together, I grouped these together, and then I grouped the whole thing together. So I'm going to ungroup the top grouping. Ungroup. I'm left clicking and clicking ungroup. And then now these groups are still in place. Okay, great. So this one, I'm going to choose axes labels, and it's just going to turn right to my axes labels. And I'm going to adjust the positioning a little bit. This group, tick labels, adjust the positioning a little bit, make sure that I don't get them off by one line, make sure that the ticks are all labeled properly. These are going to be axes labels too. Got to keep an eye on making sure that these squares are not covered up or spaced strangely after I change my size. And then this one. Okay, if I choose axes labels here, it looks a little bit weird. Why is that? Okay, so let's zoom in. It's because when we imported this, every one of these letters became its own text line. That's not good. We can't manage all of this at once, all of these individual text lines. And so instead of trying to figure out a way to merge it, I'm just going to redo this one. So I'm already on axes labels, just going to click my type tool, type intensity ratio. All right, great. Delete this all. And come over here to transform. Right here is the angle. We're going to choose 90. Great. All right, zoom out. Press Alt to zoom out on Windows. You can also use the little zoom tool in the bottom left. All right, and whoops. And so let's get these labels centered a little bit more. I'm going to, since these are all grouped, they're a single object, and I can use them as my key object for aligning my axes label. So I'm going to select those, and then I'm going to click again on this. And these all turned blue. Now they're my key object. So when I go to align, oops. Try that again. Yeah, now they're my key object. This turned to a key. And I'm going to choose this align, vertical align center. Got that. Then these I'm going to group. Actually, first I'm going to click this over one click, this over one click, grab this whole thing, click it over 2 clicks so that it has a little bit nicer spacing. Then I'm going to group it, object group. Now this is one thing, this is one thing. I'm going to re-click these so that they're my key object, and I'm going to align, horizontal align center. There, very nice. For the next couple of things, I want to have more than one graph so that I can manage them at the same time. So I'm going to add the other graphs that were in that Excel file into this figure right now. See if you can do it at the same time as me. Go ahead and pause the video and give it a shot. I'm going to export. Go ahead and export this one too. Go to Illustrator. Open 1C. All right. See, we have all our clipping groups. I'm going to select all. Then press Ctrl-Alt-7. Remove all my clipping groups. Select right here. Delete that. Group this. Bring it over into my figure. Oops. I'm changing the size. I'm holding Shift. And making sure that it's about the same size as my other one just by holding it over the top. Since it's grouped, I'll be able to move it off pretty easily. Okay. If I was going to be really perfect about it, I could do them both of the resizes at the same time, and I could use the transform tool to make them exactly the same. And I would do that before I changed all my text. Alright, so move this one over here. Great. And ungroup. These guys need to be grouped. Okay. I'm going to copy this. Take that out. Put it over here. This is going to be it. Tick labels. Axes labels. And click over. And click over. Two clicks over. And axes labels. Group. Click this again. Center. Center. And a panel letter. C. And that I'm going to want to be aligned with A. I can do my key object again. Great. Holding shift so it doesn't change in X. Okay, that looks pretty good. So finally we're going to open Figure 1D. Okay. Check it out. See all those clip groups? Yeah. Alright, select the whole thing. Control Alt 7. Removed all our clip groups. Now I'm going to get rid of that line. Going to group all of these. And I want to also group all of these, and it's much easier to do it in here. Since these are on top of one of my axes, it's a little trickier. I have to click on each one individually just to make sure I don't accidentally click something I don't want. So I'm going to hold Shift and individually click on each one to group it. Object, group. Alright, and then we're going to group the whole thing. And copy it. back to our figure, paste. You need to shrink it a lot, that's fine. Move it over here. This is going to be figure D, so let's put a panel letter. Panel letter D. Make sure it's aligned with B. Clicking B again, make it the key object. I'm going to move D down. Bring this up. All right, so we're going to change these. First we need to ungroup. Grab these, character styles, tick labels, these, tick labels, this, axes label, this, we'll talk about in a second, these axes labels, and I'm going to space these out the same way that I did with the others. Group them. All right, and this is going to be an axes label. Oh, wait a minute, what happened here? Okay. It actually had this all as one text line, but our square and our second parentheses got lost. So we're going to have to redo this one just like we redid our other ones. All right. Actually, I'm going to leave that there so I can remember what I need to type. Okay, so we're going to be we're on axes label, tumor, area, millimeter squared. How do we do a superscript? Well, character in here, superscript, squared, not superscript, parentheses. Great. Grab it that way, go to transform, 90 degrees, get rid of all this, delete. Okay, so let's do 100%. Now we have 3 graphs in our figure. We have 4 panels, A, B, C, D. But so something about graphs is there's a lot of lines in there, vector graphics lines, which we can manage the color and the line weight if we want to. And sometimes our boss will tell us our graphs are ugly and they want this line weight, they want to change the color of it and all that. So we'll talk about color next time, but right now we'll talk about line weight. All right, so I'm going to click, I want to change the line weights on all these because they're too thick. So I'm going to click this. I'm going to go to select, same, stroke weight. Okay, so that's changing that, and I'm going to change in attributes. No. Properties. I'm going to change in properties the stroke, and we want the stroke of our not important lines to be 0.5. If we go back to our figure requirements by journal, we typically have a request for 1 point, sometimes 1.5 points maximum for our line weight, and 0.5 all the way down to 2.28 for our minimum. Nature doesn't have this kind of requirement, but let's just use these as a guideline. So I might even go down to, depending on how big my graphs are and how crowded my figure is, I might even go down to 0.3 points. It's up to you, okay? So I see I've selected all of these lines, but I kind of want to also select these lines and manage them at the same time. So why don't we try select same stroke color. So that actually selected all of our axes, all of our tick lines in the back here. So let's change the stroke to 0.4, let's say. All right, that changed all of them. Now they're a little less pronounced. Our boss might think that looks a little more attractive. These, let's see how big those are. So they're at 1.3, that's too much. Let's go ahead and select same stroke color. That'll select all of these, but leave these out. I'm going to change that to 1 point. Okay. And these are maybe a little too thick for my figure, so I'm going to select same stroke weight. I'm going to change them all to 1.5. Oops, not 21.5, 1.5. All right, looks good. And I can change these too if I want to. I'll have to do that under select same. I can do stroke weight and just get all of those. And we did 1 point for those, so we'll do 1 point. I did it again, 1 point. There we go. All right, so now we have, and actually now that makes me think maybe I'll just click that down 1 click. All right, now we have some nice graphs. Maybe we don't feel sure about the colors, but we'll work on that next time. Everything's aligned, everything is, the stroke weights are right, and we don't have a whole bunch of clipping planes driving us crazy. So I hope that was helpful for you, and I'll see you next time to talk about color.